becoming pre-diabetic, whatever it may be, then working out is going to keep you metabolically active and keep your insulin to be sensitive. So you'll be able to absorb a lot of the foods without getting a major blood sugar spike that a lot of people do today. So the one thing I just say is just have patience. And if you prioritize your health, the aesthetics will come. The aesthetics will come automatically, but just prioritize your health. Don't sacrifice your health just for the sake of aesthetics.
I'm Dr. Esra Çavuşoğlu, and I've been living a sober life for the past 19 years. My battle with addiction drove me to seek new methods, devices, and supplements to improve my physical and mental performance, enhance my quality of life, and ultimately live healthier for longer. From my experiences in addiction recovery, biohacking, and longevity to the latest global developments, from groundbreaking entrepreneurs to expert academics, the conversations I've had over the years are now featured. Welcome to this week's episode of Soberhead Podcast, where I sit down with Kris Gethin, a true pro-natural athlete, biohacker, and bodybuilder who is pushing his limits without the use of performance-enhancing substances as shortcuts. In this conversation, Kris shares his philosophy of putting health before aesthetics, explaining why bodybuilding is often just an illusion and how real longevity comes from building strength, not size. We dive into the crucial role of weight training in preventing age-related muscle loss, the importance of proper protein and fiber intake, and how biohacking tools can help support hormone balance and metabolic health. Kris also breaks down the mental discipline required for transformation and how a structured, personalized training regimen makes all the difference, no matter your age. This is a masterclass in holistic health, discipline, and long-term performance. Let's get into it. A huge amount of people who watch Soberhead frequently are not subscribed. So I will ask you a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button now, because when you subscribe, it helps us to make the show better and provides better access to the world-leading experts. I'd like to thank Gedik University and Gedik Foundation for their trust in Soberhead Podcast. With their support, it is possible for us to bring you this content at this quality for absolutely free. Our host for this episode is .sub, the space, community, and platform where creatives, experts, and entrepreneurs come together at the meeting point of continents, the Bosphorus. Follow the link in the show notes for more information about events and membership. Subscribe, like, and share, and I promise to continue to bring you a better Soberhead every day. My dear friend, Kris Gethin, finally you're on Soberhead Podcast. Welcome. It was a long time coming.
It has been a long time coming. We've been talking about this for a while, so it's an absolute pleasure to finally make it happen.
Yeah, you're a man of many things. You're a hybrid athlete, you're an entrepreneur, you're a celebrity trainer, you're a biohacker, severe one, actually. Forgot anything?
Yeah, well, I'd say the one thing to add to the biohacking is that, the reason why I kind of got into biohacking was because I didn't understand that what I was doing as an athlete was necessarily unhealthy. So when I started going down the biohacking rabbit hole, I noticed, that's when I realized. So I've worked on reversing my biological age every year since I found that out. That was in 2014. And I've been able to reduce my biological age down to 26 so far, even though I'm 50 years old. So I just wanted to add that into the bio.
Kris, let's start with this. You often describe yourself as a pro-natural athlete, which means someone who doesn't use any enhancement agents to whether when you do your cross trainings or your bodybuilding.
Yeah, for sure.
Before the podcast, we had a short talk about it, but whomever I show off oh, he's my friend, and they're like, there's no way he's not using any testosterone or any steroids. Nobody can have such body, especially such thin skin or no fat or whatnot. So shall we dive in like that?
Yeah, let's do it. I've been hit with that for the past, say, 25 years, so I'm
all right.
quite used to it. Yeah, so I competed in my first bodybuilding show in 1999. And I didn't start weight training until a year and a half before that. So I picked up a weight a year and a half before I actually did my first bodybuilding show. That bodybuilding show was not tested for steroids because I had no idea there were federations for people that didn't take steroids. I had no idea. I thought people were just natural. I was very naive to it, I guess. I managed to get third in that show. Second. I got second in that show. I definitely wasn't the biggest. I was the smallest up there, but I came in absolutely ripped. I went on 0 carbs for like 8 weeks. I didn't really know what I was doing. But then I actually realized, because people were saying about natural and drug-free shows and whatnot, it wasn't until after that I realized there was natural shows. I was like, okay, well, that's what I want to do. I want to be natural. I don't want to take any enhancement drugs, even though I've got like tattoos and piercings and stuff like that. The thought of a needle just kind of freaked me out. If I go and have an IV or blood taken from me, I get very, very lightheaded as it is. But it's never something that I really wanted, to be honest with you. What I wanted was to do unnatural things in the gym to create what other people would deem as unnatural results outside of it. And to me, I take it as a compliment because I feel people live under very short ceilings. And if they have those short ceilings, then they're going to justify their own inadequacy by saying, well, that person's on steroids, that person must have been born with money, that person's lucky, blah, blah, blah. And, there's a couple of people in the industry that some of your listeners may know of, like Mike O'Hearn, my business partner in Unmatched, Doug Miller, his name is, but everyone calls him Drug Miller because everybody thinks he's on steroids as well. And he's a 2-time natural world bodybuilding champion. Mike O'Hearn is the other. And everyone will say, that guy's on steroids and blah, blah, blah. And I believe they are natural. Because I feel that you can have a land of opportunities inside your head if you don't justify your own complacency or your own inadequacy by pointing the finger at others. But, my priority is to increase my health span and reverse my biological age. I'm not going to do that through taking steroids. And, people may see a picture of me, but you've met me in person. I'm really not that big. If I go to a bodybuilding show like the Mr. Olympia or the Arnold Classic, those guys are the same height as me, but like 260 to 280 pounds ripped. Where ripped, I'm going to be like 193 pounds. It's a very different sport, but it's all about the visual perspective that you put out there in pictures. When you're ripped, when you're pumped up, when you're, without your fluid in you, then you look a lot bigger than what you are. And that's what it's all about. Bodybuilding is an illusion. The judges never ask you to jump on a weigh-in scales or ask how much you deadlift. They want to see, that muscle density, the fullness, etc. And, I'm a hybrid athlete. I compete in ultramarathons. I compete in Ironmans. I'm not going to do that as a 250, 260 plus pound bodybuilder.
Yeah, you started as a motocross racer.
Yes. Yeah, from the age of 6 to the age of like 19, I was racing motocross. That was pretty much it full time. And it was the injuries that I encountered from that extreme sport and then downhill mountain bike racing that got me into bodybuilding because I went to a lot of specialists, chiropractors, osteopaths, etc. And it wasn't until I actually started doing physiotherapy with resistance training that I was alleviated of a lot of the pain that I was dealing with, specifically in my back. And that's when I realized, okay, I'm alleviated of the pain. Now I'm alleviated of the depression that I'm going through associated with that pain and losing my identity because my identity had been motocross for so many years. And that's what actually got me into weight training. And I've always told people I didn't get into bodybuilding because I love the sport of bodybuilding. I got into bodybuilding because I love weight training. And weight training is something that's very therapeutic to me. It isn't all about aesthetics. It's like building your bone density, being more metabolically active by having good muscle density and, better blood flow to your brain. If you start the day with exercise, then you're going to have like that natural nootropic. You're going to have cognitive enhancement from getting the blood flow to your brain and carrying nutrients to the brain, crossing that blood-brain barrier much more efficiently.
Also, you're a different kind, obviously. First of all, I should say to my audience and whomever is going to listen around the world that besides your great muscles, you have a wonderful heart. I felt it from the day that I met you and your partner.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. Yeah, well, I grew up in Wales on a farm, so I learned the respect of others and, I've got a very hard work ethic. But the thing is, back then like I grew up in the 70s, through the 80s and 90s, we didn't have phones, we didn't have computers, we didn't have social platforms. And when I was getting into bodybuilding, I just had magazines to look at. I'd go to the newsagents, pick up my Flex or Muscle and Fitness magazine and look at the pages and think, wow, how do I do that? Okay, I'm going to follow that person's workout. But I had no way of engaging or interacting with those people. Now I feel absolutely honored and humbled that I'm in a position where I can interact with people. And, I go to events like, the biohacking events that we visit. And I feel very honored that I can go there, as a speaker or as an exhibitor and engage with people. And, I don't take that too lightly. And for the past, 20 years that I've been doing this in the public eye, what I really like is that people say, oh, you're quite nice. Because I think maybe they look at me with the tattoos and all that, being a bigger person, that they think I can be quite intimidating. And maybe from a visual perspective, that's the case. But I really want to be somebody that's approachable.
Yeah, I think it's also like, tell me your friends, I'll tell you who you are. Like, you guys all are like that. Dominic, Sean, you, like, it's just like a warm boys club.
Yeah, we call ourselves the Health Avengers.
It's wonderful. Are you still doing all these triathlons and the bodybuilding and all these, like, as a competition, or just
like? So I gave up competing in bodybuilding in 2009. However, I was asked to guest pose at a bodybuilding show last year. So I went through the process of dieting as if I was to compete on stage and did a guest pose. But that was the last time I'd been on a stage, 2009 as a competitor. And I still train like a triathlete. I've done like 4 Ironmans now and ultramarathons. And I still train like that. And I actually was going to do one in June. I think it's next month. Yeah, next month.
Yeah.
I was going to do an Ironman. I'd signed up for it. But then I got an injury snowboarding in December, which I got a tear in my meniscus, knocked a big chunk of cartilage out of my shoulder. So I figured, you know what, I'm not going to be able to train for this properly. So I'm going to have to probably miss out and do that next year.
It seems like you're 360 an athlete because, it's not like most bros that you would see on the weightlift room as a bodybuilder. They would just do that. They would do the triathlon and snowboarding and running and swimming, and they would just focus to one thing.
Yeah, that's why I call myself a hybrid athlete, because I love mountain biking. I was just mountain biking the day before yesterday. And then I was out on my road bike the day after. I just love cardio. I'm one of those weirdos that absolutely loves cardio. But that's my way of getting away from the phone connection, and I'm connecting with myself. And I call it active meditation for myself. It's just, a form of being present, but I absolutely love cardio. And of course, I don't want to be too big, even though I'm a bigger person. I don't want to be too big where I can't do those things. I am definitely the biggest triathlete out there when I am in those races, but I don't want to be too big where I'm requiring too much oxygen and too many calories just to finish an event.
But I did witness for myself, I can really get big, I'm one of the lucky ones. If I really train heavy, my muscles are very receptive. What I paid attention is, since I started training heavy, I'm able to run better. I never thought that was going to be the case until I did it. My legs are so much stronger now that just like I don't get tired.
Yeah. And sometimes, it's the neuromuscular pathways of actually working the muscle from within the gym that translates outside as well. That's why, there's a lot of people that are runners that I train that do just marathons, that do all the majors. And I tell them, let's not just do running. Get on the bike, get in the swimming pool, because the cardiovascular engine that you'll build from other events or other sports or other activities will translate into the one that you're trying to push towards or decrease your time on.
So, Kris, now that we explained people who you are and how you train and your beautiful heart, let's start helping people here, because you're 50 years old, you just shared. For women, I know for men also, there's one of the biggest scare is the sarcopenia and also osteoporosis. Across the world, actually, women nor men are training enough. especially muscle training. Yeah, they kind of, people are very prone to cardio for some reason. As they get older, they're on the bike, on the Stairmasters, on the treadmill, and mostly they train upper body. I see. They just think that doing the cardio thing is going to be enough for their legs. What do you see the biggest mistakes that people do starting like age, let's say 45, 50, let's say 50 actually, because you're 50, you can see other people around you, and I'm sure you have many clients that you're helping them to transform their body.
Yeah, for sure. Like I've had clients that are in their 90s, and
wow.
the very important aspect, no matter what age you are, but like specifically as you get older and you're losing muscle, because we do, sarcopenia, as you mentioned, is that you have to weight train. Now, it doesn't have to be with weights. It could be resistance training with your body weight or with bands, because not everybody wants to go to the gym. They feel intimidated. There isn't a gym near them. There's no excuse. You can actually do it at home. Like maybe just purchase a set of dumbbells or have a resistance band or use your body weight, as I mentioned. Some form of resistance training that will enhance your muscle activity, so you're more metabolically active. So let's say I was to consume a meal and there's a person sat next to me that has not weight trained. Let's say we consumed a pizza, but I am going to metabolize the majority of that pizza based on the muscle density that I have. And now it doesn't have to be big muscles like you're going to step on a bodybuilding stage, but just muscle density. So your body is going to require many more calories just to maintain that muscle as opposed to somebody that doesn't have that muscle. So, and obviously it's, if you're concerned about insulin resistance, becoming pre-diabetic, whatever it may be, then working out is going to keep you metabolically active and keep your insulin to be sensitive. So you'll be able to absorb a lot of the foods without getting a major blood sugar spike that a lot of people do today. And then when we go to bone density, the bone density, as we've noticed, like by studying like the blue zones where people live to a disproportionate age, centenarians, if they look at the bone density of those people compared to those in the Western world, they don't have fragile bones. They don't lose their balance and fall over and die 6 months later when they're in their 80s. They don't see that because these people are constantly active. If you look at Okinawa, for instance, they are sitting and standing from the floor, because a lot of them do sit on the floor, about 40 to 50 times a day. That is their resistance training for their lower body. And they have great bone density. And then you have places like Sardinia, they don't have a word for retirement. They don't know what retirement means. They keep moving. And the one thing that they have noticed is that a lot of these townships or villages that these centenarians live in all around the world are on very steep hills. So they're constantly walking up and down steep hills. And that is working their muscles and their bones as well. So it's very, very important that you do have adequate protein in your meals. So it doesn't have to be large.
Suggest?
Yeah, so it could be chicken, it could be turkey, any type of poultry, any type of fish, red meats, lean cuts of red meats, eggs, for instance, if that person's a vegetarian, it could be lentils, it could be cottage cheese, it could be Greek yogurt. There's pea protein powders out there that, will adequately help that person with getting their protein in. So I always tell, like my father is in his mid-70s, he weight trains 3 times a week. But I'll always tell my dad, if you do not have protein in that meal, don't count it as a meal. Do not count it. It has to have a form of protein because that is going to help with your muscle replenishment, your muscle maintenance, your hair, your eyes, your skin, your nails. So you've got to have adequate protein with every single meal.
How much though? So now that you're a person who doesn't take any enhancement drugs, so you're the best person to kind of guide people. I mean, you need to eat so much protein that in order to build muscle, if you're not going to take anything from outside.
Yeah. So I always tell people about 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of their body weight is the amount of protein that they should be having. And then it could be like 1.5 grams of carbohydrates per pound of body weight. However, that will change dependent on that person's activity levels. If they're burning through a lot of carbohydrates, they'll need to increase that. And then the same with fats, usually about 0.5 grams of fat per pound of body weight, for your hormonal health, for your brain function, your skin, your hair, your joints, etc. So that's usually the calculation that I would go by.
So hold on, let me repeat. 1 or 1.2 gram per pound.
Yeah, of protein per pound of body weight.
And 1.5 gram of carbs, you said?
Per pound of body weight, yeah.
And then 0.5?
0.5, yeah. 0.5 of fat.
That's people are not able to eat that much, I saw. Carb is easy for them. I just saw that. I know that. Carb is like, whoa, it's so easy. When it comes to the protein, there's a huge resistance that people are not willing to do that.
Yeah, for sure. So what I tell people is if you cannot eat your meals, you drink them. So I've got a protein shake here right now because I'm in a lot of meetings today. It's a little bit inconvenient for me to sit down and eat a lot of my meals. So I'll have protein shake. I do the same with my father. My mum's like 74. My dad's 76. They don't have an appetite. They don't want to eat much. When they go out and eat a meal, they usually share a meal. So I have them drinking shakes to ensure that they get their protein requirements in them.
Oh, wonder. So it's enough, you think? So it's not...
Yeah. I would much prefer that person to eat solid meals, but if they can't, then you can replace a couple of those meals with like protein powder. You could put some gluten-free oats in there, for instance. You could blend it up or put some fruit in there, have some nuts and seeds, blend it up, have yourself a nice smoothie.
I heard also in one of the podcasts, you're stating that, protein is really taking this highlights, the stage, the shiny lights, but people are not having enough fiber in their meal.
Yeah, that's entirely right.
Why is that?
I think it's just like, we look at the deficiencies around the world. People are deficient in like vitamin D. They don't get out much. They're working indoors all the time. And it's the same with magnesium. Magnesium is deficient in a lot of our food or can pull magnesium from our systems. And it's the same with fiber. We generally go for the protein, the carbohydrates, and we disregard the fiber. We don't have as much like vegetables or salads, or fruits, certain fruits, as we once did. So some people have to supplement with fiber, which is absolutely fine, and there are a lot of gut issues that we do know of. So prebiotics, probiotics, postbiotics, immunoglobulins, etc. But I think a lot of people, especially here in the US, there's no doubt about it, they'll go to a steakhouse, they'll have their baked potato, they will have their steak, and they'll leave the broccoli. Because the portion sizes are so big. And what do people leave? Well, they don't want to leave the steak. They love the potato. They love the carbohydrates. And the vegetables, they're not too keen on. But I always tell my clients, when you have your meal in front of you, I want you to start with the vegetables. Start with, your fibrous vegetables, your fiber, your leafy greens, your broccoli, your asparagus, etc. Start with that. Then you're going to move on to the protein. You'll consume the protein, and then you'll eat the carbohydrates last off your plate. There's two reasons for that. Number one, if that person does wear a CGM, you'll notice they'll have a lesser blood sugar spike if they eat the carbohydrates last off their plate. And number two, generally, if they are full, then they won't overeat on the carbohydrates. Because generally, if you eat out or if you go to a friend's place, they'll give you like a palm size of protein and then 3 fist sizes of carbohydrates. So generally, we overeat on the carbohydrates unless we're extremely active and we're going to burn it off.
When I had the podcast with JJ Virgin, she was saying the thing is that, she tried to encourage women to eat the protein first, because for women, it's easier to eat the vegetables and the carbohydrates. But when it comes to the protein, for some reason, there's a problem over there. And she goes like, I watch people eating and they have a huge appetizer. They have the bread, they have the butter. When it comes to the real meal, the protein, they have no more space left in their
that's
belly.
True. Yeah, she's absolutely right. And I guess it all comes down to the individual. So I have a lot of clients that want to lose weight. They want to lose body fat. And generally, as they lose the body fat, they're not as regular as going to the toilet. And that's why I always get them to prioritize the vegetables first on their plate. But JJ is completely right. Should start with a protein at least and just leave the carbohydrates last.
Knowing that you're a biohacker, let me dig in a little bit. Are you determined determined to never take testosterone if needed, like even for therapeutics?
Oh, no. I'm actually debating that right now, actually. I got COVID. I had long COVID, and it really affected me bad, even though I'm a healthy person. Because when I was a child, I almost died of having croup when I was a baby. Then I had severe asthma from that moment on. And I got pneumonia twice. So I had real bad scarring of my lungs. So it really affected me. And I had long COVID. And what I noticed, because I get my blood done every 3 months. Every 3 months, I get my blood work done. It's a little game to me because I like to fill in any deficiencies that I possibly have. So what I noticed straight after I had the long COVID, I'm having my blood test done. My testosterone levels had lowered considerably. And it's taken me a long time actually, to try to get my testosterone levels back up. Now, are they exactly where I want them to be? No. I'd like to have my testosterone levels over 800. Currently, they're about 600. They went down to 200. I think it's 248. I think it went down. Dropped down.
Can I start asking then, maybe that's going to help to so many men listening, that what did you do to elevate it from 200 to 600?
Sure. Okay, there's a few things. So number one, I really started looking at my sleep because I thought, well, if I'm not recovering, because I'm one of these entrepreneurs that will just keep going, push. I'll out-train you, I'll outwork you, I'll take all these flights. I don't care. I kind of go robotic. I don't rely on motivation because I'm always disciplined. So I really started focus on going to bed much earlier. Now I go to bed at 7:30 in the evening, whenever possible. If I go to an event like the Health Optimization Summit, I'll go out for one night. But other than that, I'm in bed very, very early, unless I'm going to an event. So that was number one. Number two, I started taking testosterone precursors. So DHEA was a supplement that I was taking, DHEA. Taking a higher level of vitamin D, being a hormone, a precursor to testosterone with K2. So I was taking about 15,000 IU of vitamin D. I started supplementing a little bit higher on creatine, which is a form of creatine from Serbia, which is guanidinoacidic acid with creatine monohydrate.
What's the difference?
So when you have guanidinoacidic acid added to monohydrate, it gets absorbed through 4 different pathways into the cell. The GAA carries the creatine into the cell through 4 different pathways, as opposed to one with monohydrate straight. And it also crosses the blood-brain barrier much more efficiently, so it's more neuroprotective as well. Okay. And the other one I was taking was pregnenolone. So I'm trying to think of the company. Justin McGuire suggested the brand, and Tim Gray takes the same brand. I think it's Biogenics or something, I can't remember. But anyway, I take that, and that's what I know. And that's, making sure that I was ultra protecting myself against EMFs. So I was wearing a lot more Faraday clothing, Faraday boxer shorts, etc. And I was wearing, I'm sure you're familiar with the Bahi grounding trainers. I wear them all the time to make sure that I'm earthing and grounding myself as much as possible, because I know what we deal with in the environment that we live in today, especially when we're flying, we're traveling everywhere, is, we're dealing with a lot of non-native EMFs, a lot of Wi-Fi, which is very inflammatory. So I just make sure that I'm grounding, earthing myself all the time. And managing stress, trying to stay in a parasympathetic state as much as possible, because stress can obviously lead to a decline in testosterone levels. And the other one was more ice baths, more cold thermogenesis. There's more and more research that is showing now that ice baths can drastically increase testosterone levels in men in particular. Women have to be a little bit more careful with extended times in the ice bath than men. Same with fasting, same with sauna, etc., because it can put them into that sympathetic dominant state a lot quicker. So I will generally do 3 minutes in the ice bath in the morning and 1 minute in the evening, and I've found that has really helped as well.
Wow, so you combined some supplements with biohacking tools. Were you able to see a difference? Because these biohacking tools that I have also, a fair amount of them, it's so difficult to measure. How do you measure if it's working or not?
Yeah, well, it all depends. If you do it in isolation, you can measure it. So I always say, don't guess, test. So I'll usually try to do something in isolation. If it works, I'll continue to do that. I didn't find that red light, because I've been told that red light can help with testosterone levels, especially if you have the red light shining on your balls. I didn't feel that I got anything from that, but I still do the red light just for different reasons, for my skin, for circadian rhythm, etc.
You're an interesting kind, because, I was doing some research about you when I was preparing for this podcast, and like, you're a meditator, you go to silent retreats, you are sleeping, like you said, at 7:30 p.m. At the same time, you press as heavy as you can, like leg presses and, chest presses. There are not many, I guess, doing both together, both of these worlds.
I guess I'm a very different character when I go to the gym. I was just talking to somebody the other day because I've joined a golf club. Even though I don't play golf, I'm starting to learn a little bit. But people, it's become more of a social club, I've noticed. I didn't go there to socialize, but I've noticed that's what people like to do at these clubs, But I've gone there for the tennis. I like playing tennis and pickleball. I like to go there for the pool, the yoga, So I like to participate in all those things. But what some people told me is that they like to approach me when they see me out on the veranda of the restaurant or the bar or out near the golf course or whatever, but they don't approach me when I'm in the gym, because they feel that I am very different when I go to the gym, because I feel that, I don't know, there's like I said, it's very therapeutic. And I guess I think I have got a very short temper. It's definitely something that runs in my father's side of my family. I'm not justifying it. And what I've just found is that when I train with aggression, I am perfect the rest of the time. I'm very stabilized. Much like an ice bath in the morning can help with mental stability throughout the day, I find weight training very, very therapeutic in the same way. So I go in there with aggression, with focus, and it's just the aggressive nature comes out into my training. I'm not aggressive in a violent way by any means, but I'm just aggressive as a person. So I'm very aware of it, but I feel like I can get away with it in the gym, and it serves me a positive purpose.
I know that you're also known by your very short time transformational work with your clients. Like, I don't want to say something wrong, but really like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks. Am I correct?
Yeah, so I do also. I've done everything. So I've done 4 weeks all the way up to 4 years. I've got clients that have been with me for 5 years, but usually I don't sign up somebody for less than 12 months now.
No. What I mean is, like, you can change their body starting by 4 weeks. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying that you're taking clients. More so, like, you're known by your, like, in a short period of time, very focused. You can change someone's total appearance. I'm not talking from being obese to like very thin. So what's your approach to them?
So a lot of it comes from, like, let's say if I've got a celebrity that needs to get in shape for a movie role and they've got a topless scene, sometimes I'm only given like 8 weeks, 9 weeks. So we have to really transform in a very, very quick way. Now, is it the healthiest way? Probably not, but it's a requirement of that person. And sometimes I'll do a 12-week transformation for clients and stuff like that. Now, the harder part when it comes to that is trying to build muscle as well as burn fat at the same time. If you've got more time, then we could just focus a little bit more on like fat loss in the beginning to create that insulin resistance and then muscle building towards the end. But it doesn't always work out that way. But it takes a lot of mental discipline and time in order to do that, in a 12-week period or shorter. It's more time doing cardio. It's more time, being prepared for the weekends, because you cannot screw up once. If someone's doing it for a year and they want to have a bit of a refeed or something on a Saturday, go out with friends, okay, we plan in advance and we can work around that. We can navigate it to go through a damage control if that person was to go out, for instance. But when it comes to a 12-week or less transformation, there's no room for that. It is all on. There's no cheat days. There's no days off. Maybe a day off there's 2 days off of weight training, but there's no days off of cardio when someone needs to get in shape in a very short time period. But I always say these transformations come from the neck up, not from what you see on the neck down. Whatever your brain applies to your goals, then the physique will follow. But not everybody has the mental discipline to want it bad enough in order to attain those goals.
What does a week looks like for them?
A week? Okay, so a week, let's say, and it all depends if that person wants the weekend off. If that person wants the weekend off, Monday through till Friday, they will be weight training for 45 to 60 minutes a day. Okay, but I don't allow a client to train more than 5 days a week because it'll lead to overtraining. Try to have them in bed before 10 o'clock. It's particularly hard for my clients that live in India. They generally like to stay up very, very late. There'll be some form of cardio every single day. Now, that would generally be steady state cardio. So when I say steady state, that could be going for a power walk outside. It could be going for a cycle ride. It could be on a Stairmaster. It could be on a rower. Just something that you're able to attain a conversation with a lower heart rate, but you're tapping into your fat stores without raising your cortisol because you're trying to build muscle. If cortisol gets spiked too many times, it's going to be very difficult for that person to build muscle.
So HIIT training is not going to work because their cortisol level is going to spike. And when your cortisol spikes, you cannot build muscle?
Yeah, you can. It's just harder. It's just more difficult. It's more difficult.
Why?
Cortisol, because cortisol can be a catabolic hormone. So in acute appearances, it's okay. But as soon as you start making it a little bit more systemic, then it can be catabolic. So if you're doing weight training, let's say if you're stressed at work and you're doing your HIIT cardio, maybe you're lacking in sleep, all of that adds up to a systemic warfare on muscle growth, basically. If that person's in a calorie surplus, yeah, I'll get them to do HIIT training. That's not a problem because now I'm not so worried about them trying to build muscle whilst burning fat at the same time. So if I'm trying to maintain muscle, then it's going to be steady state. And that time period could be anywhere from 20 minutes up to 45 minutes, dependent on where that person is in their body fat and where they need to be in 12 weeks' time. And then meals are generally 6 meals a day. But yeah, I know.
6.
6 meals a day. But they're very small meals, so they're little and often. So I try to explain it to my clients when they first hear that. 6 meals, they're grazing intervals. Let's call them grazing intervals that you're going to have throughout the day that's going to stabilize your blood sugar levels. So you're not going to get a crash where you could potentially feel hungry, you get a craving, and now you're going to eat something bad. I need sustained energy levels throughout the day. So that's why I have the little meals often. But I will generally get that client to fast on their non-training days. So that could be like a 16, 18-hour fast on their non-training days, just to take a break from their digestive system being stressed, and obviously to increase autophagy because longevity is usually part of that game as well.
That's nice. I like it. So it's probably totally different for women, yeah?
Yeah, so women, the fasting period would be a little bit lower generally. So that could be like 12 to 14 hours. But the meals are still the same. They would just be smaller meals depending on that person's size. But the weight training is still the same. That could be 45 minutes, 5 times a week, and then some form of cardio, 20 to 45 minutes a week.
Because I looked on your Instagram, which we're going to add to the show notes, I saw the transformations, and they're not like becoming like these huge people. They're like super slim, nice muscle tone. Are you doing like at every single muscle, like from calves to shoulders to all type of backs, or are you focusing more on certain muscles than others?
So it's generally every single muscle because you want to create balance and symmetry within the physique, and it's also good to prevent injuries. So if you're training one body part without training like the antagonistic body part, the opposing body part, then your chances of injury is going to be heightened. So I like to train every body part. However, if that person has a very, very strong muscles, let's say they got strong shoulders and they have very, very weak back, then I'm going to get them to focus more on their back as opposed to their shoulders. So obviously it's going to be a little bit more individualized, but everybody needs to train every single muscle group.
For your older clients, which did you say you have a 90 years old?
Yeah, I have a client that's over 90, yeah.
Yeah. How are they building muscles without taking any type of enhancement?
Well, it's more so preventing muscle at that stage. But this individual didn't start weight training until like they were 87. So that person has come from a non-trained state. So no matter how old you are, you will build muscle in the early stages. It just gets a little bit harder as you continue to progress. So a lot of people, let's say if we've got somebody now like Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood has trained since he's like 20 years old. And he's in his 90s now and he's still weight training. But he's just trying to prevent muscle loss at this stage. He's not going to be building muscle now.
Okay, so depending on the person, my understanding is like you're actually normally, under normal conditions, you're against any type of chemicals getting into one's system.
Well, it all depends what that chemical is. So, for instance, if we're talking about testosterone or hormonal replacement therapy, I'm all for that. I have many clients that are on HRT. I'm absolutely for that because that is going to prevent the onset of early aging. If that person has low testosterone levels, for instance, they're not going to feel as focused. They're not going to be as motivated. They generally don't have as much confidence, and it can decrease their longevity. If their focus is health span and their testosterone or they're not hormonally optimized, they're not going to have an optimal future.
My understanding then, you're taking over clients not just for their fitness levels, but you kind of, if they want, you're kind of taking them over and looking to their life as a whole and trying to give suggestions to make their lives better.
Yeah, so I will have that client do a blood report. I'll get them to do a DNA test and a biological age test. And then I analyze that and provide my suggestions further from that. But, I'll always say, look, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physician, but you may want to speak to your doctor because of this, this, and this.
What does a day look like for you? Because you said you sleep at 7:30. I'm wondering what time you wake up.
Well, I go to bed at 7:30. I don't generally sleep then. I usually read. I like to read for about 45 minutes because I have so many things going on in my day. I will go to bed otherwise thinking, oh my God, I forgot to message that person. I've got this deadline I've got to reach. I've got a meeting tomorrow. And I try to just get all of that out of my head by reading a good book. Now, that could be a detective novel. I'm reading a book at the moment about this person called One Man and His Bicycle who rode around the coast of England. The UK. So just things like that will help me switch off. But then I'll usually wake up about 4 o'clock in the morning, any time between 4 and 5, depends how good my sleep
4 o'clock is the middle of the night. It's not morning. In my land.
Right. Okay.
It's
4 a.m., yeah.
4 a.m. is like middle part of the night.
Right. Okay. Well, I like to keep my cortisol levels very, very low. So I will wear the blue light blocking glasses for about an hour or two before bed, the red lens, just to make sure that I am not getting the flicker that's going to raise my cortisol because I want to release my melatonin naturally as opposed to supplementing with high levels of melatonin. And I know if I do get that flicker from the lights, then I'm not going to be able to release oxytocin, serotonin, and melatonin as efficiently. And then, upon waking, about between 4 and 5, I'll generally stretch for a while. As I'm getting a little bit older, I feel a little bit tighter. So I'll stretch, generally jump in the sauna. And whilst I'm in the sauna, that's when I'm doing my meditation, maybe stretching. And then I'll get in the ice bath. Because I've got one of those ice baths at the Morozco that's on cold all the time. And then I do some sort of activity. So that could be like cardio, that could be weight training. Maybe I'll weight train later in the day, dependent on my schedule. And but sometimes I swap that up. Sometimes my wife and I will go and do a yoga class. Sometimes we'll do a Pilates. There's a new class called Hero Board Pilates, which is soul destroying. It's so hard, so difficult. I'm the only person in the class that's struggling, though. And so I like to change it up so it's not so monotonous. And I'm fasting quite a lot at the moment, so I usually won't eat until midday, 1 o'clock, something like that. But usually after I've done all of my activities, sometimes I'll do red light, sometimes I don't. That's when I start to work. And I generally work from home when I am home. So I'm usually in front of the computer. I've got a treadmill desk. So I'm usually walking whilst I'm working just to make sure that I get my steps in, getting the synovial fluid into my joints. And then usually I'll go and weight train around 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, something like that, dependent on my schedule, and then get back to work, which is usually, again, on my computer, or I could be traveling, I could be filming something, for one of my companies. And then I usually try to finish work by around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's when I'll unwind, spend time with my wife, take my dog for a walk, maybe go for a game of tennis or something like that.
What do you think is the biggest mistake that men do in their workout journey?
I think because I can put the blame on social media, people don't have the patience. They don't have the patience. They want the results now, and they don't mind sacrificing their health in order to attain those goals. And I see that a lot in younger guys. I not only do I go to a lot of biohacking events, but I go to a lot of bodybuilding events because I exhibit in both worlds. And I see people that are just younger and younger, and they're obviously on steroids because the person that they look up to, their influencer, is only like 18, 19, 20 years old. And they're obviously on steroids, and they're telling people online what they're doing. Like there's a couple in the bodybuilding, there's 2 guys, they're called the Tren twins. The Tren twins. Now, Tren is a steroid. And these kids are exceptionally popular. Like they have massive lines when you go to these events. I hadn't heard of them. I didn't know who they were until somebody told me about them. I looked them up online. And I just think that's horrendous. It's absolutely terrible that we're looking up to influencers today that are obviously on steroids and they're promoting it. And, but people just want the results now. And I just hear of people getting injured because they want to do a 500-pound deadlift, and they've only been weight training for like 3 months. And they're getting into all sorts of trouble. So the one thing I just say is just have patience. And if you prioritize your health, the aesthetics will come. The aesthetics will come automatically, but just prioritize your health. Don't sacrifice your health just for the sake of aesthetics.
Do you think that someone 30 years old and 50 years old, can they train if they're healthy, their blood markers, their general mental health and, physiques, can they train the same way?
Very similar, but what I'd say as that person gets closer to like my age, 50, you'd probably want to increase the volume a little bit more. What I mean by that, let's say at the age of 30, you were reaching failure on, say, a dumbbell press between 8 to 12 repetitions because it was so heavy. Mm-hmm. Now you may want to try to reach failure at around 18 to 20 repetitions. So the weight is a little bit lower, but you're still causing trauma to the chest if you're doing bench press, but you're going higher repetitions, but you're still reaching failure. That is the most important thing at around 18, 20 repetitions, because your pec muscles, your delt muscles, your biceps cannot read the number on that barbell or the dumbbell. It only recognizes trauma. So that's going to be a safer way of inflicting trauma onto the muscles as opposed to putting too much strain onto your joints or your connective tissues, like your ligaments and tendons around those areas. Because as we get a little bit older, they become a little bit more brittle, more fragile. We lose cartilage. So, luckily there's a lot of phenomenal peptides out there that can help regenerate, but still you want to train a little bit smarter because you can't get away with it when you're a little bit older. It
seems like you're also known by your high repetitions.
Yes.
Like 50.
50 reps. Like I trained with a couple of guys the other day. One of them was
50 reps is a lot.
Well, let me tell you this. Last week, I trained with 2 people. One of them was one of my athletes with my brand, and we were doing legs. And I said, how many reps are you going to do today? And they said, about 12 to 15. I said, okay, we're going to do 100. So we started off with 100 repetitions for leg extensions. Because I feel what I love about working out is that it isn't just a test physically, it's a test mentally. And when you're doing 100 repetitions, this is a mental test. It's not your body that's going to give up. It's your brain that's going to give up now. So let's see which brain gives up first, And you have to battle those demons. And I think that has a transcendence effect into other areas of your life. When you're working on businesses and you're working on something that you really don't want to do, you're having to put out, fires in the business, you're going to do it anyway because you've created this mental agility and discipline in order to get that done. So that's why I like to do the 100 reps or do something crazy. Because like I said earlier in the podcast, I like to do unnatural things in the gym to attain what other people believe is unnatural results outside of it.
It's interesting, though, what you were saying, because I'm sure you train women as well. And, you know, lately, what I hear from Wanda Wright, from Stacey Sims, from a couple of more doctors, that, you know, they want women to get into these failure point, especially if they're in around their perimenopause, menopause, like 6-8 reps, highest they can go.
Yeah. So I think it's important that they do reach failure, but I don't think the rep range matters as much.
Okay.
You know, I think it's very important to do like a change of repetitions, because not only do you have your fast twitch, your type 1 muscle fibers, which is going to react to an explosive movement or a heavier weight, you have your type 2A and type 2B muscle fibers that only react to a slightly lighter weight with higher repetitions. So I always like to say, leaves no stone unturned. You know, by hitting all the reps. Now, does it need to be 100? No, but maybe 30, you know, so you can do in one workout. Let's say if you started with 30 reps to failure. Well, now your second set could be 25 reps to failure. Your third could be 20, 15, 10, you know.
So the goal is failure. The goal
failure is the always goal is failure, because your body responds to trauma. You're only going to inflict trauma through, you know, reaching absolute failure. So I say that it's the gym is the only place where you have to fail in order to succeed. And it's absolutely true. Because if you see some people that go to the gym and are doing the same thing week after week, month after month, year after year, usually they're not reaching failure. They're just going through the motions. Well, your body doesn't react to emotions, you know, like it's like people who are sprinting, you know, they're pushing their absolute limits in order to get the fastest sprint. They're not just jogging.
So I want to touch base now on your supplement brand, which I am using Dileucine.
Lovely.
And you know that I was in Austin and I just had an operation, and you told me that, you know, you don't need to work out taking Dileucine. So what are the couple of the very special molecules that you have that is it's really creating a high performance?
Okay,
and I'm not saying high performance, whether like lifting heavy weights or running fast, but what are the speciality that you have on your brand?
So with the dileucine in particular, so it's a double bonded leucine molecule, which has created this dipeptide. It's a dipeptide. So what they have found, and I actually did a podcast with Sean Wells talking all about this because he was the guy that isolated it, was it goes through two different transport chains, the PEPT1 and PEPT2. I don't want to go too much into the weeds, but it's not only the size of the molecule, it's the rate of which it absorbs into the bloodstream that also creates this anti-catabolic result. Now, of course, you want to weight train whenever possible, but they have shown people that are dealing with sarcopenia, or maybe people that are on GLPs like Ozempic, they can actually prevent the loss of muscle by taking dileucine without having to weight train. Now, with leucine, the anabolic amino acid by itself, you have to weight train in order for leucine to have an effect. But with dileucine, you don't. But with Unmatched, you know, the reason why I started Unmatched, I had a supplement brand before this as well, is that I wanted to kind of bridge the gap between biohacking and bodybuilding or weight training or sports performance, because generally supplements in their health and fitness industry are not healthy. You know, I test these companies, and like, unfortunately, a lot of the biggest selling brands out there that you're going to find in supermarkets, they're not good. You know, they're full of artificial sugars or sweeteners like sucralose and ACE-K, you know, artificial dyes. They're fairy dusting the ingredients. So I wanted something that had efficacious dosages of ingredients that are shown in studies and research to actually work. I wanted to go for amino acids that are fermented and not derived from animal fur or bird feathers. And, you know, I didn't want any caffeine because, you know, I feel that people, especially in the US, overconsume caffeine, and that is another signaler for increase in cortisol. So we use paraxanthine instead. And as I mentioned, you know, we use creatine instead of creatine monohydrate. So there was just things in the industry that I wasn't too keen what other people were doing. They were just another Me Too brands. But I've been in this industry for such a long time, since 2000 now, that I felt that I could bring something different to the table. And I'm not bashing on any other brands because we're still all working and fighting the same battle. We want to battle people that are going to fast food chains or, the remote control and sitting on our asses for hours on, so we are all fighting a team, but I just feel that we should be able to merge the health sector with the sports performance sector. And that's what I feel like we've done with Unmatched, like with our, whey protein isolate that you tried. We got that from grass-fed cows in the UK because, in the US, they're generally grass-fed started, but they're finished on grains. And I didn't want that, I didn't want the pesticides or the hormones or anything in my protein. So we go that extra mile. Does it cost more? Yeah, it does cost more. But it's not for everybody. It's specifically for people that maybe eat organic or grass-fed, wild-caught, humane-raised, that just, that prioritize their health.
I saw one of your Instagram posts, or like one of the reels actually, that you were warning people how to choose their protein powder actually. Would you like to say what they should pay attention and not buy or buy?
Yeah, so I started, when I was going into, traveling overseas and seeing all these protein powders on a supermarket shelf, I thought, let me just do a video on why, in my personal opinion, not anybody else's, my personal opinion, why I don't believe it's good. And I'm calling this series Put It Back on the Shelf. It's become quite popular, so I think I'm going to continue that. But the one thing that I'd say, I was quite shocked to find there was a lot of refined vegetable oils in some of these protein powders. I had no idea until I looked at the label. And when you look at a label, let's say if you're picking up a protein powder, there shouldn't be any more than like 5-6 ingredients in there altogether, maximum. But a lot of them had like 20, 25, 30 ingredients that were just fillers, high fructose corn syrup, refined vegetable oils, ACE-K, sucralose, artificial sweeteners. And, a lot of the time the protein isn't, grass-fed. But hey, I'll be okay with that. But just don't get the rest of the crap, the artificial dyes, the E40s, the colors, and, along with, just all these fillers that are added to it. Some of them have like cookie pieces. Well, there's probably not going to be a good protein to go towards, but they're cheap. And that's why you find them in the supermarket shelves and people are price conscious shoppers, which is absolutely fine. But I'd prefer not to have it if I was to have anything at all.
When I paid attention to your brand, your supplement brand, it's not like you're a bodybuilder, you look like a bodybuilder, not like as a size, but your haircut, your tattoos and everything, and the colors that you chose for and the design for your supplement also looks like a bodybuilder's brand. And then when you look to the ingredients, they're so delicate and they're so innovative.
Kind of like me.
Exactly, you're right. There's so like the most advanced science is sitting in these bottles. It's so interesting, like you, exactly.
Yeah, well, like I go to these bodybuilding events and I'm trying to educate, or let's call them athletic events because sometimes it's CrossFit, but I'm trying to educate these people prioritizing their health. And when I go to biohacking events, I'm trying to get people to move more and weight train and be more active. You just can't buy your health through supplements or through biohacks and technology. You actually need to put in the work. So as I mentioned, it's trying to marry these two together. But yeah, it has to be an intelligent decision. So it has to be an intelligent product, which, on the shelves in, let's say, brick and mortar stores is a harder sell because that person behind the counter now has to sell this product to a consumer over something else that is very, very simple and much cheaper. So I understand that. But, as an online brand, DTC, it's a very, very strong brand. But it requires education and that people need to research, exactly what they're putting into their bodies. It's different to purchasing clothes. It doesn't really matter as much as something that you're actually putting inside your body. So I think people need to be very, very aware.
So if you would need to give advice to people about supplements, I'm not talking about vitamin D, C, magnesium, around these stuff that you have or other brands has, like what are the 3 things that you think people need to take? If they cannot find yours, let's say, because yours is rather sophisticated and I needed to bring bottles of them here because I knew that I wouldn't be able to find. But what are the, let's say, 3 top supplements for people to be able to help their system as a biohacker?
Yeah. Okay. Well, number one, I'd say it doesn't have to be creatine. It could be creatine, for instance, because we know that there's more and more studies that are coming out to show how great it is as a neuroprotective amino acid. So it's great for the brain, great for brain health. And there's some studies that are emerging now showing that it's actually good for bone density and bone health, as well as ATP production. So I'd say creatine would be number one. Further from that, something that is good for your gut. So we have a product called Immuno-IgG. If you can't find Immuno-IgG, go for colostrum, for instance. You can find colostrum. The reason why we went for Immuno-IgG is because it doesn't have any dairy, and it has almost double the amount of immunoglobulins in there as colostrum. But colostrum would still be good if you can't find Immuno-IgG, because we are always being bombarded through the system, whether it be food that has hormones in it, glyphosate, herbicides, pesticides, could be artificial colors, flavors, whatever it may be. We are constantly getting bombarded from these foods that can cause gut dysbiosis. It can cause gut integrity issues, and now we've got leaky gut, and of course the majority of our hormones and our immunity is created in the gut. So I think people should prioritize their gut health. So, that would be number two. And further from that, I think something that actually encourages somebody to drink more or have electrolytes to keep them hydrated. So an electrolyte drink with no sugar, because there are some electrolyte drinks out there that has a lot of sugar, but no, electrolytes, because the majority of us are dehydrated. We're not drinking as much as we possibly could. We think if we're indoors or we're not sweating that we're not dehydrated. Even just being in circulated air from air conditioning, we are dehydrating ourselves constantly. And if our bodies are made up of around 70+% of fluid, then it goes without saying that if we're feeling fatigued, if we've got a headache, if we don't have, the performance aspect intact as we once did, chances are it's because of dehydration. So if I'm training a client and they say, and they show me that, their performance is down, their speed time is down, or the amount of weight that they were using previously is decreased, chances are it's not because of lack of sleep or because they ate something wrong the previous day. It's usually because of dehydration.
What would be a sedentary person? I'm not talking about someone who's trying to transform their body. Let's say, again, 50 years old male, kind of goes to the gym, not really killing themselves. What would be the bare minimum on the body weight training side? Can be a pull-up, can be a push-up, whatever. But what would be the bare minimum that, hey, guys, you should definitely do these? If you don't do anything else, any microtoning thing, you should do that for your health.
Yeah, so number one, I'd say some sort of squat. Now, that could be a freestanding squat without any weight. It could be body weight, or you could be holding a kettlebell. You could be holding a dumbbell, some form of squat movement. Maybe it's a leg press if you've got back issues, just so you're creating a lot of lower body strength, throughout your glutes, throughout your hamstrings, and you're creating bone density within that. Now, the reason why I say that is that your legs make up almost half of your body, so you can get almost half of your body trained with one exercise, and that squat will work your hamstrings, your glutes, your quads. So that's the number one that I would say. And then further from that, some sort of back movement. So I'm talking just our larger muscle groups now, legs being one, back. So that back could be like a bent over row. So if you bend over and you've got like a couple of dumbbells in your hand, you're rowing with it, or you could do a deadlift where you're holding onto those the dumbbells and you're bending over and you're straightening your back up, and then bending over and then back up. So you're working your lower back, your lumbar, your traps, your rhomboids, your lats, etc. That's a good back movement. And then from that, I'd say a chest, because if you're working your antagonistic muscle being your back, now you want to work your chest, the opposing muscle. So some sort of push-up. It could be a bench press. It could be a fly. If you're at home, like a push-up, it could be on your knees if it's too hard to do it, just in a complete plank position. And then the last one, I'd say something for your core stability. So that could be a plank. It could be crunches. It could be sit-ups if your back is healthy. So I'd say those are the number one movements that you should do. And try to weight train 3 times a week, if possible, as your minimum.
Kris, thank you so much. That was great. I don't know how the time flew. We came to almost an hour, I guess. I miss you, my friend. When is the next time I'm going to see you? Where are you going to be?
I don't know because I don't know if I told you, but like I said, I'm not going to speak at any events this year because I've just been like last year I did like 85 flights. I spoke at like 25 events, and I just felt like I was contradicting the message that I was putting out there to reduce your biological age with all this travel. So I haven't got any plans for any events in the biohacking space as yet. I know I'll be definitely at the Mr. Olympia. That is going to be in October, but I've got other travel arrangements, but no events as yet. So
are you going to be exhibiting at Health Optimization Summit in London?
No, I've got to go to the UK twice this year already. Maybe 3 times. So I'm not going to be there at the Health Optimization Summit, no, unfortunately.
Your products are only in US?
No, they're worldwide. They're worldwide. So we do have a distributor in the UK, Body Shocker, but there's a couple of great online stores here, well, in different parts of the world. Muscle and Strength is one of them, and they ship to every single country as well. But we do have distributors in the UK, in the EU, in Australia. Yeah.
Because EU is like, my brother lives in Romania, because Turkey is very difficult to bring things in through the customs.
Kind of like Germany, probably.
I'm not sure about Germany. Probably it would be more difficult. But UK and Romania, EU would work for me. So that's great.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my wife's Romanian, so she's her family's getting it.
That's great. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you soon somewhere.
I'll let you know. If I decide to pop somewhere last minute, I'll keep you informed.
Have a wonderful day.
And you. Thank you so much.